Chapter 21. Deacon. Deacon smiled as Dante whooped with joy and danced around the living room. "Woo-hoo! That's 3 games I've won. You want to try again?"
"You play one without me," Deacon said. "I need a break, and maybe watching you will show me what I need to be doing."
He hadn't played video games in forever, so he knew his problem was being rusty. But he didn't want to admit that to Dante. He was having too much fun bonding with the kid. His kid. Deacon shook his head, still unable to fully comprehend that Dante was his son. And of course, he knew that Shonda and Dante would have to find their own place soon. But he was endlessly glad for the time he had with his son now. As he watched Dante play, he wondered if they really did have to move out. He hadn't really considered proposing marriage quickly to Shonda, but now he wondered why not. He certainly hadn't loved anyone since her. He'd never really gotten over her. And while he wasn't certain, he suspected she felt the same way. Plus, they'd planned to marry all those years ago. Why not finish what they'd started? Before he could wander down that dangerous rabbit hole further, his phone rang. When he saw it was Eric's number, he stepped out of the room as he answered.
"Hey, Eric, do you have some news?" "I do. We picked up Dr. Nelson today. It turns out he is distantly related to Governor Goldman, who also happens to have a son with a drug problem." "Wait, are you telling me that the fentanyl exchange Shonda witnessed involved Governor Goldman's son?" No wonder the man had tried so hard to cover it up, if that was the case. Though he wasn't directly responsible for the amount of fentanyl coming into Illinois, he certainly hadn't done much to stop it, and his son being involved wouldn't look good when it came time for re-election, which was less than a year away. "It looks that way. We picked him up, too. Of course, he's not speaking yet, and Daddy has hired the best lawyers. But we managed to find video footage of the deal, so we're hoping it will be enough." "So Dr. Nelson was brought in to do what, exactly? Find out what Shonda knew? Or make her believe she was crazy?" "Maybe a little of both. He's not saying much right now, but his financials show that he has a gambling problem. My guess is that Goldman asked him to help clean up the problem and offered to pay off his debts, and Dr. Nelson couldn't say no." "Do you know if he was hypnotizing or drugging Shonda?"
Deacon doubted the man would admit to that even if he was, but he had to know what had been done to her so he could help her fix it.
"I don't know yet. We're still looking into it. If there's a hypnotherapist you trust where you are, you might see about getting her an appointment. They might be able to answer your questions."
Deacon didn't know any such person off the top of his head, but he had a bet that Jordan might. He'd be sure to call him after this phone call.
"What about the HR rep at the hospital? Is she involved, or was she just following orders?" "Looks like she was just following orders. Evidently, her marching orders came from someone pretty high up in the department. They're keeping the name quiet for now, but I have a few hunches. I know of a few high-ranking brass who were pretty cozy with Goldman. Anyway, she was persuaded because her boyfriend has had a few DUIs, and this cop assured her he could make them go away."
Deacon whistled.
"What a tangled web we weave indeed. How about the guys who followed us to the warehouse?" "Ah, yes, those two. Turns out they were college buddies of Goldman's son, hired to try and kidnap Shonda's son in exchange for her silence. Thankfully, it was their first job, and they were too nervous to do it the first day."
Deacon looked back toward the living room and shook his head. They had been so lucky. God had definitely been watching out for them.
"So, is it over? I mean, there's still the possibility of a trial, and if that happens, Shonda may have to come back to testify. But yeah, we're pretty sure we got everyone involved in both the exchange and the cover-up. If she wants to come back now, it's probably safe." "Thanks, Eric. I'll let her know." "Glad I could help, my friend. Try not to stay such a stranger from now on, huh?" "You got it."
Deacon hung up the phone and chewed on the inside of his lip. All of a sudden, he was conflicted. He knew he'd have to tell Shonda. Though she'd settled into her job and seemed to be relaxing, he knew that she still operated with a cloud of fear over her head, and now he could help alleviate that. But if he told her, would she go back to Baytown? Would he lose Dante? He couldn't think about that right now. One step at a time, and the next step was getting her into a hypnotherapist office to see if she'd been hypnotized. Deacon pulled up Jordan's number on his phone and waited for the detective to answer.
Detective Graves here. Jordan, it's Deacon. Do you know of any trustworthy hypnotherapists? Hypnotherapists? What for?
Deacon filled his friend in on what he knew and waited for his response.
Whoa, that's a lot. I feel for your friend, but man, I'm glad I'm not dealing with that here. I don't know of anyone off the top of my head, but let me make some phone calls. Thanks, I appreciate it. You bet.
Deacon hung up with Jordan and was about to head back to the living room when something outside the window grabbed his attention. He moved closer and peered out, not believing his eyes. It couldn't be the same man. It just couldn't. The man would have no idea where they were unless he was connected to whoever Shonda called a few nights ago. Was that possible?
Dante, I'll be right back,
he hollered into the living room before heading out the front door. He was going to find out who this man was once and for all.
Hey, who are you?
He called as he stepped outside. The man said nothing, but he didn't run either.
Hey, I'm talking to you. Who are you and why are you following us?
The man simply tilted his head and then tapped his ear as if signaling for Deacon to listen to something.
What? What am I supposed to hear?
The man held a finger to his lips and then touched his ear again. Though annoyed, Deacon pressed his lips together to listen. At first, he heard nothing. But then the quiet sounds of sirens floated to his ears. As he listened, they grew louder, and a sense of dread filled Deacon's stomach. He didn't know why or how, but he was sure that those sirens meant Shonda was in danger. He was about to ask the man who he was again, but his phone rang. When he recognized Cassidy's number, he answered it. "Deacon, is Shonda working today?"
"Yeah, why? What's going on?"
"Luca was listening to the police scanner, and he just heard that shots were fired at the hospital. It's going into lockdown, but the police are on their way."
"I need to go too, Cassidy, but I can't leave Dante. Can I drop him off on my way?"
"Sure, we'll be happy to watch him, but there's no reason to go, Deacon. They won't let you in."
"I know, but I have to be there."
He knew Cassidy would understand. Not only was she dating Jordan Graves, but she'd been abducted once and knew how hard it had been on Jordan. "I get it. Bring him by. We'll make sure he's safe." Deacon thanked her and then hung up the phone. But when he turned back to ask the man more questions, the man was gone. Who was this guy? Knowing there was little time to waste, Deacon ran back inside.
"Dante, turn off the game. We're going to the firehouse."
He didn't tell him the rest because he didn't want to alarm him. Thankfully, Dante didn't ask why. "Really? Cool." Deacon tried not to display his concern as he drove to the firehouse. But every minute that ticked by on the clock felt like an hour to him. When they reached the firehouse, it was all he could do to keep from ushering Dante inside alone and then taking off again. Instead, he parked and walked his son inside. Cassidy was waiting at the entrance and gave him a knowing nod. "Dante, so good to see you again. Do you want to come help me clean the truck?" "Do I get to go inside it?" Dante asked. "You bet. We have to make sure Bubba didn't leave any trash lying around."
"Hey, I heard that,"
the large man said as he joined the group. Dante nodded and began to follow Cassidy and Bubba before realizing something was off and turning back. "Aren't you coming, Dad?"
"Actually, I need to run a quick errand. Do you think you can stay with Cassidy and Bubba until I return?"
Dante shrugged. "Sure." Then, as if he had no care in the world, he turned back to Cassidy and Bubba. "Can we turn the siren on?"
"We'll see, little buddy,"
Bubba said. Deacon watched them a moment longer before hurrying back to his truck and to the hospital. The cops had the parking lot cordoned off, but he got as close as he could and then approached the cops on foot.
"Sorry, no one's getting in,"
the cop said, holding up his hand as Deacon approached. Unfortunately, it was a cop that Deacon didn't recognize, but he decided to try his luck anyway.
"Please, my girlfriend is a nurse in there, and I'm fairly certain that the gunman is after her."
The cop lifted an eyebrow.
"What makes you so sure?" "Because she witnessed a crime a few weeks ago, and even though it was in another town, the timing is suspicious, don't you think?" "People witness crimes all the time," the cop said with a shrug. "What makes you think the shooter is here for her?"
Though Deacon was infuriated by the cop's attitude, he reminded himself that this cop didn't know him, didn't know the story.
"Because the crime she witnessed involved Governor Goldman's son."
That seemed to get the cop's attention.
"I can't let you through, but give me her name and description and I'll pass the information along."
It wasn't what Deacon had been hoping for, but he figured it would have to do for now.
"Her name is Shonda Turner, and she works on the pediatric floor. She has dark skin, dark hair. Please, you have to get to her."
The cop nodded and relayed the information into the walkie attached to his shoulder.
"Okay, they know to look out for her. I wish there was more I could do for you, but I'm afraid you'll have to head back to your truck and wait there for information."
Deacon sighed and followed the man's order. There had to be something more he could do, but he didn't know what, and he was not good at just waiting.